Hi guys, Mimi G here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a sew along for one of my new Simplicity spring patterns, 9917, view A and B. The only difference on this pattern is the length of the skirt and whether or not you want straps. All right guys, we're going to be working on pattern 9917. You have two views, but the only difference really is the length of the skirt. So I'm going to be doing the short version. If you want to do the long version, you're just going to leave the pattern the way that it is and not use the cut line. The only other difference is you have straps versus no straps. For the tutorial, I am going to go ahead and do the straps and the covered belt, of course. But if you don't want the straps, you can just omit that step and then continue on. Now remember that on the back of the envelope, you're always going to have a list of suggested fabrics. This is a woven fabric that I'm using for this dress, and you're going to have a list of notions. In this case, you're going to need an invisible zipper. You're also going to need a buckle so that we can do our covered belt. You're also going to need some boning and some bra slides and rings. Okay, let's go over the pattern pieces that you're going to need to cut. You're going to need to cut pattern piece number 11. This is the bodice back lining. I'm using the same fabric for my bodice and my lining, but you can choose to use something different, and you're going to cut two. You're also going to cut pattern piece number 9. This is our bodice front lining. You're going to cut one on the fold. We're also going to cut pattern piece number 12. This is the bodice side back lining, and you're going to cut two. Then we're going to cut pattern piece number 10. This is our bodice side front lining, and you're going to cut two. Okay, you're also going to cut pattern piece number 17. This is our belt. You're going to cut two of fabric, and then you're going to cut two of interfacing. Okay, we're also going to cut pattern piece number 2. This is our bodice side front. You're going to cut two of fabric and two of interfacing. You're also going to cut pattern piece number 4. This is our bodice side back. You're cutting two of fabric and two of interfacing. Okay, we're also going to cut pattern piece number 1. This is our bodice front. You're going to cut one on the fold, and you're going to cut one of interfacing on the fold. We're also going to be cutting pattern piece number 7. This is our back facing. You're cutting two of fabric and two of interfacing. Pattern piece number 8. This is our side back facing. You're going to cut two of fabric, two of interfacing. And pattern piece number 6. This is our side front facing, and you're going to cut two of fabric and two of interfacing. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 3. This is our bodice back. You're also going to cut two of fabric and two of interfacing. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 5. This is the front facing. You're going to cut one on the fold of fabric and one on the fold of interfacing. We're going to go ahead and cut pattern piece number 20. This is the front and back facing. We're going to use this for the skirt hem. So you're going to cut two on the fold of fabric and two on the fold of interfacing. We're almost there, I promise. We're going to cut pattern piece number 18. This is our ties, and you're going to cut pattern piece number 9. This is going to be used for our bra strap. We're going to cut pattern piece number 15. This is a pocket, and you're going to cut 4. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 14. This is the skirt side front and side back, so you're going to cut 4. You're going to cut pattern piece number 13. This is the skirt front. You're going to cut one on the fold. And lastly, we're going to cut out pattern piece number 16. And this is the skirt back, and you're going to cut 2. Once you have everything cut and interfaced, we can start sewing. All right, let's go ahead and start with pattern piece 1 and 2, which is our front and our side front. And remember that the bodice pieces are the ones that are interfaced. Our lining pieces are not interfaced. So we're going to go ahead and pin. You should have notches that you marked. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we align our notches first. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of small slits into the front, not the side front. And that's just going to help you sort of curve this on to your pattern piece. Okay, and since we're here, we're gonna go ahead and pin the other one the same way. Then we're gonna head to the sewing machine and stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we're gonna back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Okay, I want you to go ahead and press your seams open. You're going to sew the other side the same way. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and grab pattern pieces 3 and 4. This is our bodice back and our bodice side back. So you have double notches that you want to go ahead and align and then pin. So I'm going to do one at a time. Make sure that I'm aligning those double notches. Okay, we're going to do the other one so we can get them both under the machine at the same time. Okay, you're gonna head to your sewing machine. We're gonna stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're gonna do both the same way. Okay, you're gonna sew your other side back to back the same way. Press your seams open. Okay, so we have our 2 back pieces and we have our front. We're gonna go ahead and join them at the side seam. So you have a single notch, so you wanna match up your single notches and pin. Okay, you're gonna go ahead and pin the other side the same way, and then we're gonna head to the sewing machine and stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Stitch your other side the same way. Once you've done that, this is a good time to put it on your body and just test fit. All right, we can go ahead and set our bodice aside for just a second. We're gonna go ahead and do our straps and then the little piece that goes in the back for the bra ring. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold these in half and stitch them together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now you can fold this in half, right sides facing, and pin it if you need to. And then we're gonna go ahead to the sewing machine and stitch, again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can use the threaded needle method if you need to do the skinny ties. I have this set of tubes that I got from Amazon, and I'll link to them in the description box. It's my favorite thing to use. So if you're gonna do the needle, then you don't need to close out one end. Because I'm gonna be using my tube and I'll show you how I use it. I'm gonna be stitching it the long way using a 1/4 inch, and then I'm gonna close off one short end, which I will cut after the fact. So let's go ahead to the sewing machine. Let's fold in half and stitch a 1/4 inch. You're gonna do the same thing for your ties and for the little back piece. Okay, you're gonna do both your long ties the same way, and you're also gonna do your short ones. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn my ties over. I already turned these out. I basically just put in the little purple tube inside of my strap, and then we're gonna use this little metal piece that comes with it to push the fabric through. Now they come in various sizes, so it really just depends on the size of your strap and what you're using. Okay, now the little end that I stitched, I'm just gonna unpick it, or you could just cut it off really because you have seam allowance. Go ahead and press your straps flat. All right, so I have my short straps here and I have my lingerie strap slides and rings. I'm gonna use the clear ones. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the clear ones. I will show you really quickly with the black ones because these are kind of hard to see. But you're just gonna grab your little ring and you're going to go ahead and place your short strap inside just like this. You're gonna fold it in half and we're gonna go ahead and pin it where our dots are. And you're gonna go ahead and stitch across the top to secure them in place. Remember, your seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. You're gonna do that for both of your ties and both your rings. Okay, make sure that your strap is in between your dots, and we're gonna go ahead and stitch this on. Make sure and back stitch. Go ahead and secure the other side the same way. Okay, I'm going to show you again on the black one so that you guys can see. You're going to grab one end of your long tie and you want to put it up through the middle over that center bar and then back down. Okay, so I'm in one and then go right back in the other side. Okay, so it should look like this right now. You're going to go ahead and turn under 1/4 of an inch on the end. You're going to fold it over and we're going to go ahead and stitch that down. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is to lay your strap wrong side up, meaning you can see your stitching, the underside. So you're going to go ahead and grab the end and go through the ring. And then you're going to go inside over your stitching and then out the other end. Okay, so you might need something to help you. And really, if you're using really thin fabric, this wouldn't be so hard, but I'm using a linen, so it's a little thicker. So I'm going to use my little stick here to help me pull my fabric through. Okay, I got it one end, so I'm going to go ahead and pull. And then you're going to take that end again and you're going to go in through the remaining bar. Okay, pull your strap, and you can obviously adjust this later. So you want to make sure that you're not twisting it. So what I like to do is I want to fold this as if I were wearing it, and then bring my tie to the front, and you're going to flip it, right, because we have our seam allowance, and pin. You're going to do both the same way. Now we're going to head back to the sewing machine and go ahead and just tack these in place. All right, once our straps are in, we can set this aside for a second. I want you to grab one set of your skirt sides and 2 pockets. Okay, now remember we cut 4 of these, so you should have 4. I only grabbed the first 2. I'm going to grab a pocket. You have a single notch on your pocket. You have a single notch on one side and 2 notches on the other. So make sure that you're putting your pocket in the correct place. And we're going to go ahead and pin. Okay, once you've done this one, you're going to grab your other side and you're going to go ahead and do the same thing. You're going to place your pocket, making sure that you're aligning that single notch and pin. Okay, we're going to be using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And now we're going to go ahead and understitch the pocket. So you're just going to move the pocket to one side, making sure your seam allowance is still facing your pocket. You're going to stitch just along that edge. You're going to do your other pocket the same way, and since you're already here, go ahead and grab your 2 remaining side panels and do the same exact thing with the remaining 2 pockets. All right, you're going to grab one side front and one side back. Remember, we cut 4 of these, so it's the same exact pattern piece. We're going to go ahead and match this up and pin. Now you probably noticed that I finished off the raw edge. I like to do that when I stitch my pocket on, and then I'll finish the raw edge of my pocket after. Okay, so you should also have transferred your dots. So we're going to stitch starting at the top. We're going to stop at our dot, back stitch, break our thread, then start again at the next dot, back stitch, and then stitch to the bottom. Okay, we're using our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the beginning. Back stitch at your dot. Okay, you're going to move down to your next dot. Okay, since we're here, we're going to go ahead and close out our pocket. Okay, you're going to do the same exact thing with your remaining sides and pocket. Okay, so once our pocket is in, we're going to go ahead and pin our front to our side. So we're going to go ahead and open the front piece that was cut on the fold. You have 2 notches. They should line up to the 2 notches on the side. And you're going to pin. Okay, let's go ahead and stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other side of our front panel that we had cut on the fold. So you're gonna take your other side, right sides are facing, align your double notches. Okay, once you have it pinned, you're just gonna go back to your sewing machine and you're gonna do exactly what we just did. Stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and attach the 2 final pieces, which is our back to our side. So I have pressed my pocket towards the front and I can already hear y'all cussing me out because you're gonna have to do all this gathering, and I know it's a lot, but it's gonna make the dress worth it. I'll also point out that in order for my pocket to lay flat and for me to be able to press my seams flat, I just make a snip just above and below the pocket so I can open that seam allowance. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and grab our back piece, and you have 2 notches. So we're gonna look for the side that has 2 notches, and you're gonna pin. Now I'm gonna have you do both of them at the same time, so that way you can just head to your sewing machine and knock both of these out at the same time without having to come back to your table. Okay, so we've pinned one. You're gonna go ahead and pin the other one to this end here, and you're gonna do the same thing we just did. You're gonna stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm gonna do 2 rows of gathering stitches. We're gonna do it in sections, trust me. So we're gonna start at the back. I'm gonna do 2 rows of gathering stitches till I get to the pocket, then I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna then create another 2 rows of gathering stitches from the other side of the pocket along the entire front until I get to the pocket. And then we'll do another section of gathering from the other side of the pocket to the end of the back. I'll start it off by showing you how to do the first 2 rows, and then you guys can continue from there. All right, I'm gonna start 5/8 of an inch from the edge, and I've got my stitch at the longest possible stitch. So on my machine, that's 5 millimeters. I'm gonna back stitch to start, but not at the end. Okay, I'm reaching where my pocket is. I'm just gonna lift my needle and pull my thread. And then you're gonna start back 1/4 of an inch away from that stitch. Back stitch again. Okay, you're gonna do the other sections the same exact way. Okay, so I like to have my bodice here. It helps me to know how much to gather per section. So I'm gonna go ahead and start gathering on one end. This is the center back. I'm gonna grab my threads and pull. We know this is our side seam, and this is the side seam because that's where our pocket is. Okay, then I'm just gonna give it a little look over. I can gather a bit more. Okay, and once it looks right, I'm gonna continue gathering. You wanna make sure that you are matching your center fronts. So I like to put a little dot both on the center front of my bodice and on the skirt. And you're gonna continue pulling and gathering until each section is the same exact size as your bodice. All right, once you have your skirt gathered and your seam lines aligned with the seam lines on your bodice, we're gonna go ahead and pin our bodice to our skirt. Okay, once you have it pinned, we're gonna head to the sewing machine. We're gonna stitch this together using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, remember to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Okay, go ahead and finish off your seam allowance and you're gonna press your seam up towards your bodice. All right, let's go ahead and put in our zipper. So I have my zipper opened face down. The zipper pull is face down. I'm gonna go ahead and pin. I have a really long zipper because it's all I had. Then I'll just cut it off afterwards. But I'm gonna go ahead and pin it in place. I'm gonna put a pin where my dot is because that's where I'm stopping. Okay, we're gonna head to the sewing machine. We're gonna stitch one side down. Then while at the sewing machine, we will go ahead and do the other side. Okay, I'm using my invisible zipper foot today, but you can use your regular zipper foot. If you've watched any of my many tutorials, I usually use my zipper foot, but I do have this one handy, so I wanted to use it. If you are using your regular zipper foot, you just wanna make sure that you're stitching close to the zipper without actually hitting your teeth. And it might be helpful, like I did, to go ahead and use your iron to open out the coils. It just makes it a little easier. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and close your zipper. We want to mark where that seam line is at the waist. We don't want our seam lines to be mismatched. So I'm going to go ahead and zip up. And you want your other seam to be exactly here. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab a marker, or I use my fabric marker. And you're going to go ahead and make a mark. I'm doing it on this side just because it'll show up on the other side, which is really where I'm going to need it. Okay, you can open your zipper back up. And we're going to pin the other side to the other side of our dress. Okay, so as you can see, I've first made sure that I'm aligning my waistline seam with that marking on my zipper. We're going to be starting from the bottom, working our way back up. Okay, you can go ahead and close your zipper. So this is what your seam lines should be doing. They should be matching up. That's why that little marking is so helpful. Now we can close the rest of our center back seam. Okay, I've gone ahead and pinned the remaining part of my center back seam. I'm starting at the hem, and you'll notice I switched to my traditional zipper foot. That's so I could get close to the side where our zipper stopped. We're using, again, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Back stitching at my dot. Now you want to go ahead and press your zipper flat. Okay, if you've done your invisible zipper correctly, it should be invisible. We're going to go ahead and set this for a side. We're going to put together our lining and facing. Okay, so I'm starting with the front lining. This was cut on the fold, and we have our facing piece that was also cut on the fold. You're going to place them right sides facing. You have some notches. You want to make sure to align those notches and pin. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch this together using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you've attached it, you're going to go ahead and press your seam allowance down. Now the remaining sections of your bodice lining are going to work exactly the same. You're going to pin your back facing to your back, your side back facing to your bodice back, bodice side back, the side front facing to the bodice side front. The same exact way, I want you to press all of your seam allowances down. Now that we have them all pinned and making sure that you aligned your notches, head over to the sewing machine. You're going to stitch each of these down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now that we've added the facing pieces to the bodice pieces, now you can go ahead and construct your lining the same exact way that we did for our bodice. Our two side fronts go attached to the front, and then we have our side back that you will attach to your back pieces. So you'll notice that I pressed my seams open. I did that because I don't plan on using boning for my bodice. The reason I'm not using boning is because this is the one with straps, and this is my third one that I've made now, and it sits perfectly comfortable with the interfaced bodice and the interfaced facing on me when I have my straps, that honestly I don't need the boning. If you are bustier or you plan to do this without the straps, then you may want to consider putting boning in. If you do decide to do boning, then you're gonna press your seams to one side and you're going to edge stitch. What's that? That's gonna create a casing for you, right? So you're gonna take your boning and you'll measure however much distance you need, minus 5/8 on top and 5/8 at the bottom. And then you would just insert it into that casing that you created. So if it was to one side, you would just insert the casing. And you don't have to put casing in every seam. You might only need it on the side seams, that's where I did it in my previous dress. I only wanted it on the side seams. I didn't want it at the bust or in the back. But again, that's really up to you. I just wanted to point out, if you did want to do it, that's how you would do it, but I'm not gonna do it for mine. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna attach my lining to my bodice. So I have unzipped my dress. You wanna make sure your straps are down. And with right sides facing, I'm gonna go ahead and start pinning. I'm also making sure that I'm aligning those seam lines. Okay, let's head to the sewing machine. You're gonna stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, while we're here, we're gonna go ahead and give ourselves a stitching line at the bottom of our lining so that we can turn under 5/8 of an inch. Okay, I want you to head to your ironing table and I want you to press under that 5/8 of an inch following your stitching guide, and then meet me back at the sewing machine. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pressed using my stitching guide. Now before we sew up the side, we're gonna go ahead and understitch our lining. So my seam allowance is facing my lining. We're gonna just stitch close to the edge. Okay, let's fold our facing back down. And we're gonna go ahead and stitch our sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin. Okay, we're gonna pin the other side the same way. Then we're gonna stitch this. I'm gonna be using my zipper foot so that I don't accidentally stitch and hit my coils. Okay, you're gonna stitch your other side the same way. Okay, you're gonna go ahead and trim off that corner so that you can turn this right side out. Get a little closer. Okay, you wanna make sure that your zipper is nice and flat. I'm gonna trim the other corner. I'm getting pretty close. Then you can just pull on your zipper at the top. Now for the inside, you can slip stitch this closed, right? You're just gonna place it so that the folded edge is just past your stitching line. And then you can hand stitch this, or you can also choose to stitch in the ditch, whichever one you prefer. Now we're gonna go ahead and give our bodice a press. You wanna make sure that you're pressing the very top of it nice and flat. And then we're gonna move on to the hem of our dress. Okay, we're gonna go ahead, set the dress aside for just a second. You're gonna grab pattern piece 20, that's our front and back facing. Okay, so this is actually the part where I realized that there's a misprint on that pattern piece. And I had you guys sew both short ends when in fact you needed to cut 4 of these. So you need to cut 4, and then you're gonna join all of the short ends together. I don't know how I thought those 2 were gonna fit around that ginormous circumference of that skirt, but you're gonna go ahead and cut 4, and you're gonna go ahead and stitch all the short ends together so that you have one huge loop. And make sure that they are all curving the same way. You'll notice that I already serged the top of mine because I thought that we were done. So the reason I'm doing that is because my fabric, although it's a linen and it does have some weight, it's gonna create a bit of bulkiness because of the weight of my linen. So that's why I'm choosing just to serge the top. But if you have a thinner fabric, then you can turn in a 1/4 inch on the shorter side, right? It goes like this, so that you can have a clean finish on the inside. It's really up to you. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. So as you can see, I have my seam lines here, right? Not on the sides, because you're gonna pin them to the seams that are on your skirt. So the wider part goes at the bottom, and the shorter part obviously goes up, right? Because the skirt sort of does this shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip my dress inside of my loop. Right sides are facing each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and first just match up the seam lines that are on the facing to the seam lines that are on the dress. I'm gonna do the same thing in the back. If you want to pin in between those, you certainly can. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch our facing to our hem using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, you're going to work your way all the way around until you get to where you initially started stitching, and then I want you to understitch, making sure your seam allowance is towards your facing. Okay, we have understitched. I went ahead and pressed my hem up, so you'll have a really beautiful wide hem on the right side, and we're going to go ahead and pin the hem in place, and then you're going to stitch. So I'm going to pin on the right side of my fabric because I'm going to stitch on the right side of my fabric. I want to make sure that my bobbin thread stays on the wrong side. So you're going to go ahead along this entire very big circumference, and you're going to pin your hem in place, so you're facing in place, so it doesn't shift as you stitch it. Once you have the entire thing pinned, we can head to the sewing machine and top stitch. Make sure to back stitch the beginning and at the end when you go all the way around. You're going to continue in the same way until you have stitched down the entire facing. Okay, so now that our dress is finished, remember to either stitch in the ditch or hand stitch your lining in place. You're done with the dress. Now I'm going to show you how I do my covered belt. Okay, so you're going to grab your 2 belt pieces that we interfaced, and we're going to place them right sides facing. I'm going to go ahead and pin. Okay, so now we're going to stitch all the way around, but we're going to leave about a 2.5, 3-inch opening in the center. So I'm going to start on one short end. I'm going to work my way all the way around one complete side, up the other, and then right in the middle on the top, I'm going to leave, and you could do it on the top or bottom, it doesn't matter. You're going to leave a 2 or 3-inch opening so that we can turn our belt right side out. All right, so I've stitched all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I left an opening here. So we're going to go ahead and turn our belt right side out. I also went ahead and trimmed my corners. Now we're going to go ahead and turn our belt right side out. Okay, you want to make sure and poke out your corners, and then you're going to go ahead and press your belt flat. I went ahead and pressed my belt, and you can close your opening with a slip stitch once you're done. When I buy my self-covered buckle kits, it comes with 2 pieces. One goes inside of the other. We're going to cover the one that's a little bigger, and then the other one sort of goes inside and secures it in place. It also comes with this little sticky part that we peel and attach to our fabric. And it also has the little pin, right? But I don't ever use this. I like a really clean look on my covered belts. I don't like to see any metal, so I actually don't use this. So first you're gonna take your little sticky part, okay, and a piece of fabric, just a big square. It's definitely much bigger than I need, and I'll just trim it after. And you're gonna go ahead and peel one side, and you're gonna stick it to your fabric. Now you're gonna be sticking it to the wrong side of your fabric. Mine is the same on either side, so it doesn't matter. Now I like to take this to the iron and just give it a really quick press, just so that the glue sort of melts a bit. And then we'll go ahead and peel the top off. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and peel the other side of the backing. Okay, once you have it removed, we're gonna go ahead and cut around this. Okay, now I'm also gonna cut along the middle, so I'm gonna fold it in half. And then you'll notice on the sticky part that there's these little cutout angles here, so you're gonna cut those as well. Okay, now you're gonna get the bigger one, and you'll notice that one is slightly smaller and thinner than the other. So the big one is the one we're going to use. And I'm just gonna place it. And now you're just gonna turn the sticky fabric part in. And you're just gonna do this going around the corners. This can get a little fiddly, especially depending on the fabric you're using. But we can try and hide most of the corners or anything that's not perfect with this piece here. So once I have the outer part done, then I start doing the middle. And if I need to cut a little further in, I can. I don't want too much bulk, so I'm gonna remove some of that. Just push into those corners so that the sticky side sticks. Okay, once you have the main pieces on there, you're just gonna look at it from the front. Push into the corners if you need to. And then on the inside, you wanna make sure that you push so it's as flat as possible and that it's sticking to the metal. Okay, once you have it the way you want, you're gonna take your other piece. There's a hollow part on the inside. You want that to be facing down. And you're just gonna push it. And then with your scissors, you're just gonna clamp down on the middle a bit. Now we're gonna grab our belt. You're gonna place it around that little bar. And then you wanna make sure that you're going past the buckle, right, so that you can easily stitch. So I'm gonna pull just a tad. And then I'm gonna place a pin. And we're gonna just stitch this in place. Okay, once you're done, your buckle should look like this, and then you just insert one end. I mean, you guys should know how to put on a belt, but I'll tell you anyway. Okay, once you finish your belt, you are all done. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this sew along. Remember to tag me on Instagram at MimiGStyle. I can't wait to see all of your amazing makes. Until next time, peace.